Good evening. I'd like to call to order this special meeting on December 16th of the Methacton Board of School Directors. Please rise for the pledge. The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. We have all board members in attendance except for Miss Aubrey Larsenese. Now we have recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we have one speaker, myself, and if it's okay with the board, I'm going to remain here at the seat and let you know that there is a paper copy of my presentation at your seat. We will also share the copy of the presentation on the screen. So on the title slide, and I'll be naming the slides for my person in the back to forward them. So good evening and welcome to the special meeting to consider modification to the Methacton School District Health and Safety Plan. Slide one, I'm sorry. Okay.
Excuse me, Dr. Zerbe, sorry to interrupt. Ms. Drummond, do you have any announcements before we start?
I would just like to advise the public that masking is required in the auditorium and in the school. Please, if you could. Thank you.
And is there rules if there's not masking in the auditorium? I've never had this. We haven't had this before, so I wasn't sure.
For those people in the audience that are currently not wearing masks, we ask you kindly to put a mask on. And if so, you do not have a mask, we have disposable ones available for you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask the people who are not masked if you could kindly get a mask. We do have disposable masks for your convenience in the lobby. And if you choose to not use a mask, then I'm going to ask you to kindly leave the meeting.
On the district website, there is for where the meetings are listed, there is a notification there that allows for medical exemptions if they were provided, if the name and the medical exemption was provided to me. We have one person on that list, and we know who that is.
I sat through the entire meeting last week without a mask on in the high school. Nobody said one thing to me. Not one person.
If you need a mask, there are some available. If not, we're going to ask you to please leave the meeting.
I have one, thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Zerbe?
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, I'm presenting on the motion that was posted on the agenda. So it says, approve the modification to the Methacton School District Health and Safety Plan to provide for a mask optional indoor school environment in buildings that educate students in grades 7 through 12 and for non-student buildings beginning January 31st, 2022, and for buildings that educate students in grades K through 6 beginning February 28th, 2022. The district pandemic team is a team of school nurses, teachers, administrators, parents, board members, and has been advising the superintendent since the beginning of the pandemic, discuss the future of masking in the district and supports moving in a mask optional environment. Next slide, please. Making any changes to an environment will have an impact. This slide, I share several matters that we must consider when making this decision. There will be a larger number of students included in the contact tracing. We will need to move from a 3-foot circle to a 6-foot circle for contact tracing, obviously making the circle bigger, likely making the numbers greater. However, the counter to that is the increase in vaccinations that we've been made aware of. In fact, the Montgomery County the Department of Public Health says that I think the number is up to 88% now of individuals eligible for vaccination have at least one shot, and that is a good number. But from those vaccinations, we're also going to be implementing the Test to Stay program as it's listed there in January, and that will occur. All of that will occur prior to the outlined motion that's before you. All other mitigation matters will stay in place. So as they're listed, there will be no change to the cleaning protocols, no changes to wearing masks on bus. And in fact, that can't change because that's a federal requirement. And you see the rest of them listed there. And what's also really important is the principals have provided, as we discussed at our last regular board meeting, to get some feedback. And I got that feedback, and staff members, some have some concerns, but the proposed mask optional plan, but their concerns for the most part can be supported, and that there is no indication that this change or this proposed change will impact the operation of our schools. Next slide, please. When we look at the recommendation, the following factors were considered. The recommendation from the district pandemic team, the County Department of Public Health planned to release a sliding scale masking recommendation. They are in the process of providing that out soon. The superintendents have all seen that draft of a recommendation. The planned end to the state masking mandate. If you recall, the State Department of Health, probably almost a month after our board decided to implement a masking mandate back in August of 2021, the state came out with a masking mandate, and that mandate, covered everyone in the Commonwealth. They recently, as everyone's aware, had lost a challenge in the courts, and as a result of that, that has changed the requirements from the state. But during that period of time, they had also come out and said that regardless of what the court was going to rule on, that they were going to expire that mandate on the 17th of January 2022. Another matter other contributing factor was access to vaccines by adults and students of all ages. We've held some vaccination clinics here in the district, and you'll see later, if this is approved, one of our responses to that is to continue having more vaccination clinics. The county claims, and again, the 88% was something I learned today. Superintendents in the county meet with the Department of Health and CHOP on a weekly basis. It's usually on a Thursday at 1 o'clock. The information, just wasn't updated from 85 to 88. The CHOP and County Department of Health say that the time frame, if you're going to choose to go to a mask optional environment, the time to change would be in late January and no later than. As a result, and the reason for that is just, it's may be obvious for everyone, but the reason for that is we're going to be coming out of a holiday, and typically the trend has been coming out of a holiday, we see transmission spikes for the first 2 weeks coming out of that. Let's just give you an understanding. So those are the contributing factors. We go to the next slide. If approved, our district response will include the following. We'll provide additional nursing staff to meet the needs. So right now we have 7 buildings and 8 nurses. We also have anywhere between 3 to 5 additional nurses per day. And those nurses are part-time. They're helping out at the elementary levels. They're helping out doing contact tracing. They're helping out running the employee testing assurance program, and helping our nurses and relieving them so they can continue doing the things that they need to do. And the response is we will definitely need to hire one additional nurse for sure in order to manage the test to stay program. Our additional response will hold some additional vaccination clinics prior to the planned change. We will address staff concerns to meet their needs. So as I mentioned before, there are some staff that have some concerns. And feedback from the principals is that, there are some things and accommodations that we can make to help support them with those concerns. We'll continue to monitor the impact via our data dashboard. We will implement the Test to Stay program. It's targeted for January 10th of 2022. And we will continue, and we just heard again today, it was reaffirmed by the County Department of Health that if you do go with a mask optional environment, you will be able to implement the Test to Stay program. The current regulations, as I mentioned at our last meeting, require that the Test to Stay program has a mask requirement, but that is going to be changed, and that's confirmed again today in a meeting. Trying to think where we continue to follow the CDC and county recommendations, and they're making recommendations and not having requirements. There are options for the county to require masking. They have the right to do that. And lastly, we were going to continue to maintain the self-monitoring protocol, and the school board of directors reinstituted masking mandate as needed. That last one is probably the most critical when we talk about even considering making a change. And what I mean by that is everyone on this board knows that we could make an action today. Tomorrow, the information that's provided to us could completely change not only what we expected in the future, but change our mind about our vote even today. And I recognize that, and I respect the challenge that even having this conversation is for all of you and for members of our public. Because we can't predict what someone's going to tell us, what the experts are going to tell us, and what the trends are going to be. We can only make decisions based on what information we have today. So when the Department of Health and CHOP say that if you're going to consider a mask optional environment, the best time to do it would be at the end of January after a perceived spike based on history last year, as well as we trend into the summer months. So it's important for everyone to know that if we find that there's a reason that we need to go back to a mask mandatory environment, I'll be making that recommendation to the board, and we have the very right to make it optional or to make it mandatory. And so that's within our purview, that's within the rights of this school board. So with that said, I just want to make that clear. So if you decide not to approve this motion this evening, you also have another chance to do it at some other time if you so choose to. Or if you make a decision tonight, you can get back after January and say, hey, you know what, we're changing it. And you can do that. That may not be the best practice, but that and definitely needs to be communicated that may have to happen based on uncertainty in this whole process. So the last slide, if you would please, it is just again, the motion, but the note at the bottom, if this is approved, I will take the health and safety plan and do the strike throughs of all that stuff so that it's updated, and if it references all the practical matters associated with the motion that's approved. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation and take questions from members of the board. Any questions? I'm sorry, any questions for my left? Ms. Perdue?
I just have one in reference to the last statement you made about, I guess, to reinstitute the masking mandate as needed. I think it would be nice to have a little bit more information on what will require us to reinstitute, as far as what type of metrics will we use if there's a need to update. And if you don't have that now, I think that's something that will be needed, just because if the decision comes or if the time comes, it will be nice to know what metrics we're looking to use to change our position if the need.
Yeah, I don't have that number for you here this evening, but I can tell you that if CHOP says all districts that are optional right now, you ought to think about changing, because here's what's happening, here's what we're forecasting down the road. You're going to have a problem. I'm going to share that with you, and I'm going to recommend that we're going to avoid that problem, and by taking an extra step to do that. So certainly there are numbers. The county has the low, moderate, substantial, and high thresholds, and we can certainly use those. So for example, at the very least, if we're in high, which would mean positivity and our incident rates are at a certain level or greater, that could be for 2 weeks. That could be something we could consider. But those are the metrics that are out there right now. So I wouldn't think that there'd be anything different.
And that was my question. Sorry to be slow on the mic. I have no problem with optional masking starting on the dates that you said, no problem at all. My question is, for example, where I work in the district that touches this district, we are going mask optional on January 17th. However, it's still based on low, medium, and high. So if today was January 17th, we wouldn't be able to be mask optional because we're at high. So that's my only concern. I have no problem whatsoever with changing to mask optional, but not if we're in high. And that's the truth. Like, we all know Princeton and Cornell just went virtual. I know those are higher level institutions. I'm just giving an example. So that it's not necessary to come back here and mandate and those kinds of things. So that's just my question. So, and I apologize because I didn't realize the matrix, they weren't still there. I just assumed if we were in high, it's not optional anymore. And I was reading the new plan incorrectly, quite frankly, because it's confusing. I'm sure it's confusing to everybody. So anyway, that's my one question and my one concern.
No, that's a fair concern. The county. So in our conversations, not my conversation with them, but the superintendent's conversations with them, we've asked, can you give us something other than we recommend? Because every column in the chart says recommend or not recommend. There's no column even in the high that says we require, you should require this or that. And so that's part of the dilemma as we're getting in with the information we have today. Obviously, there's stuff going on over here where there's a spike in transmissions. We have the state saying, well, we're going to get rid of the masking requirement on January 17th, no matter what. We have confusion, even though we've shared communications with our parents, there's still confusion about, who's doing masking. And then obviously, as this is all transpiring, certain districts are taking upon themselves to create their own rules outside of what the county is doing. So this is not an easy decision, and it's certainly one that requires a lot of thought. The real reason that we're here, besides making the determination whether or not we want to go with a mask optional environment, is to provide a decision in advance of the choices that families need to make prior to, I believe, January 22nd, which is, am I going to continue with in-person instruction, or because of this change, may I opt for the asynchronous instruction plan? And we want to be able to inform them whether we go the end of January with a mask optional environment or the end of March. We at least need to give them a roadmap to say it's possible that we are going to go mask optional, whether it's on a specific date or if it's by a set of thresholds like the ones that are in the low, moderate, substantial, and high chart. Does that help? Any other questions to my left? Yeah.
If I could just ask the members of the audience to remask who are currently unmasked. Thank you.
So I'm just going to ask if people would be so kind. We're trying to conduct the business of the board, and the board has set a policy where masking is required inside here if in fact you don't have the medical exemption. It's important that and this matter is important for our students, our staff, and our community, that the board has an opportunity to focus on making this decision this evening. And I recognize that people in the audience may have different opinions with regards to masking. And I think everyone at this table has varying opinions to the matter as well. The thing is, the board made a decision, and we'd like if you would please respect it so that we can continue the conversation and they can focus on making the decision rather than continually trying to monitor masking in the room. And I'm just asking for people to kindly cooperate with us.
If I can just say something, I know that it's a week before Christmas. We all want to get home as fast as we can. So the quicker we can move through it, the better. Thanks.
Mr. McGinnis, I'm sorry.
So a couple of questions, if you don't mind. The last time we were in this meeting, the discussion was, did we poll the faculty? Are we going to lose faculty members? Because the decision tonight, one of the decisions tonight is to change their work environment, right? And that's not on them, it's on us. So if we vote to change their work environment, we can only expect an answer from them. Are we able to anticipate what's going to happen? Are we going to lose teachers? Are 3, 4, 5 of them going to raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm out? Because again, if we change their work environment, that's on us, not on them. So do we have a pulse on what's happening there?
We do. So I asked all the principals to meet to discuss with their staff. And I'm talking about an informal, I didn't have them do a survey or any, I don't have everyone's response. But our principals are very familiar with their staff, and they're very familiar with those who have always had concerns about masking and challenges associated with COVID. And the feedback that I received in general, we got 2 to 3, on average, 2 to 3 teachers that have concerns. But like I said earlier, those concerns can be supported. And there is no one that has reported that a teacher would decide to go on a leave of absence or leave their position as a result of this change.
Okay, that's fair. So the other question I have is, why wouldn't we tie it to metrics, right? So it feels as if we are proverbially throwing a dart at a calendar, right? And we're landing on January 22nd. So January 15th, we're finding ourselves in an environment that it's untenable. And all of a sudden we're kind of lockstepped into making this decision on January 22nd. And I know you said, well, we can change our mind. But if I'm a parent, wouldn't I want to know some data there to see what's going to happen in the next week as opposed to being reactionary? Because if I have data without context is useless, right? So why wouldn't we frame this in some sort of, hey, if it's X, we're masks. If it's Y, we're no mask, we're optional, all that other stuff. Because right now, our current trajectory doesn't seem like there's a lot of strategy to it. And that's the only thing I have a problem with. I'm not opposed to mask optional. I'm really not. You grab us a year ago on this board, we were dying for this opportunity to have boosters, to have vaccinations, to have all this other stuff. But if I'm a parent out there and I want to say it's January 18th and we're 4 days away from this mandate, what does it look like? I would rather put some bumpers on that decision for our parents so they can make that decision as opposed to saying, yep, we're mask optional. And oh, by the way, we reserve the right to come back and change this. It doesn't seem very structured in my opinion.
No, those are fair comments, and I appreciate you sharing them. Let me see if I can respond to those. So we had, when I say we talked about that very thing in our pandemic team. And one of the challenges is that once we decide that we're going mask optional, if it's by a date or if it's by some other metric, the thought from the group was that we would have a very hard time bringing the kids back when the metric flipped back 2 weeks later. So getting kids to wear masks after we've made it optional is going to be a huge challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that was the feedback. So the thought was, what else is out there that is going to change the trajectory in any way whatsoever So, because we were all waiting for the vaccinations, and that was the key element, at least, many months ago. That once we have access to the vaccines for the 11 through 5-year-olds, I think those are the ages, we would be able to, consider this, this thing that we're doing tonight. But having another set of metrics to say when we're going to start that, if it's not on a specific date, I'm okay with. It's just if I go beyond that, and then 2 weeks later it flips just for another week, then I'm back in there for another 2 weeks. I'm going back and forth. So the county plan is the one that the pandemic team said it doesn't make sense for us to keep moving from. We could be in moderate, then go to substantial, then back to moderate, and we would be 1 week wearing masks, 2 weeks later out masks, and go back and forth. Now, some might think, well, that also makes sense to, if transmission is up, why wouldn't we just continue to, require the mask? But it's the management side of being able to manage the students, manage the staff, and know when we're going to be masking and going in and out. It's not impossible, but I'm just saying that was the feedback from the pandemic team. So the thought was, should we just, if CHOP and the county are saying don't go mask optional before the end of January, that seemed to be a reasonable approach to say, okay, we're going to do 7 through 12. They're likely to have their boosters and their original vaccination well in advance, and give a little bit more time for the 11 through 5-year-olds to get the second shot and be prepared. So that was the conversation.
So help me understand this. So let's play this out. January 22nd, we go mask optional. And I'm just throwing a date out there. January 30th, we're in a high transmission environment. It's spiking. We're not going to go back to masks because it's just too hard to manage? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I gave you what the pandemic team discussed.
I'm just looking for clarity here, Doctor. Is that what we're saying?
I think that is what has been said. Now, the challenge with all that is for how long will we be in high? So are we going to be in high for 2 weeks, and then we're going to go back down to moderate?
So there's no
challenge.
There's no bar that we're setting this policy to. We're just throwing darts.
Well, what we're saying is, do we have a mask optional environment, knowing that going forward we're going to continue to live with the virus, and there are schools all across the country that have been mask optional,
I'm with you. I'm not worried about any other school other than Methacton. So right now, in the scenario that I rolled out, that January 22nd rolls by, we're mask optional, all of a sudden we're in a high spike. We're not going to react to that?
Well, I will be.
How? There's no trigger mechanism in our plan right now. And again, I am not against mask optional. I am not. But if I'm a parent, I just need to know what to expect. And I need to make decisions based upon those expectations, because listen, we've all gotten the emails. Some parents are like, I'm out. And that's okay. I completely respect that. But we need to set up parameters for them to make decision, because if there's no decision criteria, we're just throwing darts. And for the third time, I am not against mask optional. I just need a better policy from us as leaders of this district to say, these are the bumpers that we're going to go against. If we stray outside, if there's a variance, this is what we're going to do. If we stay inside the bumpers, this is what we're going to do. Because it's only fair to these parents. Because if we just say, you know what, we're just going to, I don't know, we'll figure it out then. That's not fair to these parents. They need to make decisions based upon their children and all of the criterion that their family's health is based upon. Because if we're not saying this, then that, it's not a policy, it's a guess. That's my only problem with it.
So, Mr. McGinnis, so then to answer that, the best thing to do would be to modify the motion to say what it says there, so long as we're not in a certain level. So we have 4 levels. We have the low level, we have the moderate level, we have the substantial level, and the high level. And so, again, we didn't discuss this as a pandemic team, but I would say that, at the very least, if we hit high level, we are in mandatory masking.
Then we need to spell that out, right? Because right now, and I'm repetitive now, we either spell out a plan, or we say, you know what, January 22nd, we're mask optionals, and you know what, January 25th, we'll figure it out. That's not fair to parents in this district, in my opinion.
No,
I'm good.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback, but that is, so the response to that could be using the county chart and doing that as a mechanism to trigger the change to mask optional and to bounce back.
Then that needs to be discussed.
Any other comments?
Mr. McGinnis keeps referencing January 22nd, but we are referring to January 31st, correct?
Yeah, January 22nd is the day that
Okay.
parents have to choose to either
that's-
go online or in person.
And then I just wanted to be clear. So that's the date for them to choose. Now, I hear the metrics comment. I am a bit afraid that we're going to be in a situation that we were in the past when we were returning to school, we were basing it on numbers and cases until we finally got to a point as a district that we realized we will never achieve those numbers to actually get back. And this board sat here and said, we need to change the metrics so we can get the kids back to school. I hear some parents are concerned, but I'm equally hearing from parents as well as students that they are concerned with masking continuing. We are talking 6 weeks from now, so the numbers just came out of a Thanksgiving holiday, heavy fall sports season, winter sports season. I know sports will continue. These children are continuing to participate in unmasked events throughout the entire year. I don't believe that mask optional means they have to not wear a mask. Everyone will have a choice, but we are talking 6 weeks from now. So I want to also be mindful to those students and those parents that are reaching out to us that are ready for this. So I appreciate the thought that went into this plan. I appreciate the county conversations. I appreciate the principal conversations, the feedback that you shared. I would love to see this plan move forward.
Any other comments from my right, Mr. Winters?
Yeah, I think when we go to public comment, I agree that we need to have some type of bumper on high transmission. So at the very least, I will expect that we will probably have some type of amendment to this so people understand that will probably come up for conversation. I think it's fair to the community to understand that this as itself is probably not something I can support as is.
So if I could ask Mr. Winters, do you think that having a
So I think
the high as the
I think as is fine with the anticipated dates, and there's a practical nature related to, I understand the pandemic's concern that once you get rid of the masking and making it optional, that there are going to be a lot of people that will never want to go back. We just saw that here. So we know that there's going to be a resistance once there's a relief on the masking, which is fine. But there will be, I understand, but I think it's the correct thing to do for the community and for parents to understand, if we do get to a high transmission level, that we need to return to something that helps mitigate. And I'm not going to get in an argument with anybody about if it mitigates or not. I believe, and I'm sure somebody will tell me I didn't read the right stuff. I believe that it helps mitigate at that level. It would mitigate at low transmission as well, but we're making a choice between balancing of all the different needs. So I would like to see some type of high transmission of either Either or, Lower Providence, Worcester, or Montco being a high transmission, whatever that time frame is, that it would trigger a return to masking.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions?
I think we need to make a decision sooner than later. Parents not only want to make a decision whether to go from virtual to in-person, but they want to go from in-person to virtual. So we didn't poll the parents, we didn't poll the community. We got some input from the principals, and it sounds to me that there's a small percentage, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Zerbe, of teachers that have concerns, but there also could potentially be a very large percentage of teachers that are excited about this and ready to move on. School could possibly be the only place these children are wearing masks. They could be going to Eagles games, well, they are, and they're going to sporting events, they're playing with their friends, they're gathering in with large volumes of people. But when they walk in the door, oh, guess what, Tommy, you got to put your mask on. I think we need to kind of move past that mindset of we're protecting people by making them wear masks in the only place that they wear them.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, as a response to that, I don't think, honestly, I think there is a responsibility of being on the board for the health and safety of all students and all staff. So there's a responsibility there, independent of somebody going to an Eagles game. So from my perspective as a board member, I have a responsibility for doing what is, I believe, the correct thing to do. And I'm not making a decision about keeping Methacton students in Methacton or having Methacton students leave to go to charter schools. I'm building it based on a health decision. So it's just a difference of opinion. I think we are making a decision that allows people, and that's been an argument for months, that we haven't had a matrix that allows people to know when we were going to get rid of the masking. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're trying to do here and make that criteria. So that's just my response to that.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. On my left, Ms. Cancro.
I would say that, well, coming into this for the past 10 days, I really thought we were being very collaborative, working with all stakeholders that were involved in this process. So I am a little frustrated where we are today because I understand what everyone is saying. However, when we're looking at this back in November, we knew that the governor was going to remove this in January of 17th. His background and his information should have been from the experts from the healthcare of the state. So he puts this time down. I agree, it doesn't look great because there's absolutely nothing with low, moderate, there's no metrics to it, but this is what he's done. So the state has removed the mandate on January 17th. We've been informed since November. There's a recommendation that has been discussed with the pandemic team from Dr. Zerbe. The pandemic team approves it. In December 6th, on Monday, 10 days ago, we reviewed it. He said, please provide me feedback. Dr. Zerbe was like, the pandemic team is approving it. The county Department of Health is going to be doing this slide and scale for mask optional. We've talked to CHOP, the county Department of Health. We're looking at all of these things, the CDC, the county recommendations. For some reason, we are choosing not to follow state and local recommendations. Again, we do have to follow some healthcare agency, and we're choosing not to follow them, or we're picking when we want to choose them because we're not satisfied with the parameters they've placed. No, I am not satisfied that it is gray feeling, but is the recommendations of the state and local health agencies that we choose to follow them. And for us to choose how we're going to pick what school district we're looking at or what parameters we're going to put in, it's a little bit difficult for me to do because we did meet, Liz and I did meet with the MEA leadership. We did ask Dr. Zerbe to get feedback from the principals. We do have an HR that talks to the staff. There wasn't a lot of pushback on this. They said to go forward to this recommendation to follow the county guidelines. So that's where I stand. I want all the kids to be here safe. And I think with the vaccination of teachers, the boosters with the teachers, the vaccination from 5 ages above, the test to stay for masking and unmasked. We have all these safety guidelines put into place. We will have to pivot if our health, Montgomery County tells us we need to put it back on a mask mandate. That is what I'm going to rely on. You know, they don't have clear guidelines like we want. But I think we also should have went back to Dr. Zerbe last week, last Friday, last Monday, to really push back on this and do the metrics. So, you know, we all have a choice to do what we're going to do, step forward now, but you know, I'm following and I'm looking all of this, and we did our job thoroughly. We're following all these guidelines. We're following the CDC and the county and CHOP. So that is just, you know, I vote to keep this, and if we will have to pivot if it spikes to a high threshold. That's the only thing that I'm saying. But we have to follow one health agency. That's my opinion.
I just want to make a point of clarification. I don't think we're sitting here, as you stated, and not trying to consider all the information provided by us. I think we have the information here and looking at it. When I mentioned metrics with my initial question or comment, it wasn't to say that I don't think we can go mask and optional from a fact and based on the information that we have here now. When I mentioned metrics, I brought it up because Dr. Zerbe's last comment also referenced reinstituting masking. And I wanted to say, if that happens, we need a metrics around that because people will want to know. Because if we implement masking now and we come back and have to change it in March, people will want to know what metrics are we using to change it. That was my question. So my question is not to be, I guess, confused with what we're being asked here to do today. My question or comment was really in reference to masking. If we have to revert back and pivot, as you said, what criteria will we use to pivot? And that is something he didn't have. That was my question. So I have no problem with masking optional. I just wanted to be clear so that all Mifacton parents and students and teachers also have the information to know that whatever decisions we made is going to be based off information. So whether we decide we're going to use the county data, recommendations made by the CDC and CHOP, that's something that needed to be stated. That was my question. And I asked that because people in the public may not know. What criteria will we use to reinstate masking is my question. So it wasn't asking for metrics in relation to this. I think we've all reviewed, we may have had conversations with Dr. Zerbe to make sure. So we didn't look at this last or 2 weeks ago when it was presented and just left it and come in here today to bring it up and ask. But this is the point of having this conversation so we can bring our concerns to the public. So it's not a matter of that. It's just really asking to dig into it to say, if we have to pivot, what are we basing it off on?
I just have a question, and maybe Dr. Zerbe, you can help clarify this. So the governor's suspension of the mask mandate on January 17th was to then allow local jurisdictions to decide on masking mandates. Is that correct?
That's what was part of his statement, yes.
Thank you. And, you know, just I'm hearing all the discussions here, and it sounds to me like there may be a will to amend this motion to put the parameters in there that will then reflect the masking requirement or the suggested requirement that the county deems appropriate. Okay, are there any other questions from?
The only, oh, sorry, Ms. Rocco, go ahead. I was just going to say, and just to the metrics point, on the contributing factors, when it says the County Department of Health plan to release a sliding scale masking recommendation, like we don't have that. So that's where my concern is. And all that I want is I want tonight to vote yes to masking optional starting January 31st and February 28th. And those who want to get their shots, get their shots. I just want to make sure that in there it says, however, if we're high on January 31st, we can't do that. That's it. That's all I want.
So here's, I'm not debating this, but let's say, for example, the board, would rather add an addendum, I'll call it, to the motion. So it would read like it is. It would read, approve the modification to the health and safety plan to provide mask optional indoor school environment in the building to educate students in grades 7 through 12, and the rest of what's on the screen. I don't know if you can put it on the screen. Can you put the motion on the screen? Thank you. And then after that, it would say, the district will remain in or shift to mandatory masking when in 2 consecutive weeks of high transmission based on the methactin positivity and incident rates. Now, when I say methactin, you know that on the chart, you can search by the school district and use those, or you could search, or the other option is to use the county. My preference would be to use the school districts, only because we've generally tended to run much lower than the county on those metrics. But if that meets some of your concerns, that allows us, and I think as Mr. McGinnis said, allows us to be clear with all of our parents that, hey, when we hit this is what's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do. But anything less than that, then there's a mask optional environment. And that way it allows parents to decide before January 22nd whether or not they are comfortable with that potential mask optional environment, so long as it's out of the high area. So that's just a thought. Is it what I have or not?
I don't think it's worth it.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, so if people are interested in that particular part to move this thing forward and allow at least us to be much more clear with our families, and to allow or prevent us from having to come back and have this discussion again as another meeting, maybe that's the best path forward.
So the only question I have is because I don't know what the district, I'm okay with having the high positivity rates, but I don't know what the district area entails. Does it entail Shannondale and Meadowwood? Does it entail just the children, the families of this district? Like, I don't know those parameters.
Yeah,
I'm not
so
familiar with them. So I kind of feel like we have 2 huge.
We have 2 metrics systems to choose from: the county or the combined Methacton, Lower Providence, and Worcester set of data. If you look on the district chart, that we provide the county information, and we also provide the school district information. So we can certainly choose either one. I'm just saying that if I'm telling you that the Methacton numbers are generally run lower than the county numbers. And if that's important or not important, then you can make a decision on that.
I would agree with Methacton. I mean, I forget what it was. There's Upper Perk right now is through the roof. So no offense, I don't want them to be part of our matrix right now, right? Because they're high. So I'm fine with.
I want to ask a question if I can. It's in regards to what Ms. Cancro was just saying. So if I'm understanding correctly, I also want to use the Methacton numbers, not the county, but I think what I'm hearing and what is going through my head right now, are we at all going to take into consideration the actual positivity rate within this school? Meaning our dashboard, I think right now has 20 some odd cases. So we are now counting our district numbers of people who aren't even in this school, may not have children in this school. And then when you mentioned the 2 retirement communities, I guess I understand we can't break out, okay, these 40 houses don't have people in Methacton. I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm saying, are we at all considering the fact that Methacton district and community may have such a low number of positivity, but we're basing it on 2 large townships? I think that is a bit concerning. I know we need a metric, but I just want to be clear that we could have 12 cases in this entire school, but we're basing it on a district-wide number. I'm just a little concerned about that.
Now I mean, that certainly makes sense. My challenge with doing anything other than the numbers that I've given you, we have not made any pivoting changes on the individual positivity that we receive in the schools. So other than through communicating with the County Department of Health almost a year ago when we actually did close Arrowhead Elementary School for, I believe, 1 to 2 days because of a high number of cases, which weren't a result of spread within the school, but happened to be an outpour of an event that occurred prior to coming back into school over the holiday. So with that said, I don't know what that number would be. Is it 40 cases in the district? Like we've never had that conversation, and I don't know where. If we use Mr. McGinnis's rhetoric, it would be throwing another dart at that. So that's, I mean, I don't think that's a good way to do it, but I understand what you're saying. So the best choices, because we've been using them and there's trends associated with that, are the ones that either the county post for the county dates or data or the ones for the MATHAC. That would be my recommendation if you're going to use a metric at all.
And I understand that, and I understand that would be a hard metric. I am just, I need to be clear that the district's numbers could be very low and we're back to masking it, and the positivity rate here is extremely low. And I just have concern with that. I'm not saying you can do anything about that, but in front of the public, I just want to say that I have concern with that.
Certainly, that's fair. And that's likely what we're going to see. We're going to see more cases in the community than we do seeing in our students, because the data from CHOP, I don't have that, but the data as CHOP has told us, students are in a better position being in schools because of all the precautions and things that we've taken over the time. Yeah.
Just to add that too, it's just that we were closing schools last year based on incident rate and within the schools, and and so that's where positive cases. So that's where I would rather not. I wish we had had this discussion. I understand that we're here now with this discussion. I respect that, but I'm looking at incident rates was what was our determining factor of shutting schools, cautionary procedures, and now we're looking at positivity rates of our district. So my concern is, who are we to pick the metrics, and where is our health agency helping us and guiding us on that? And that's where I just have I do just have a difficulty with that. So I'm just.
It's a fair comment, but we've been using these two sets of metrics from the very beginning, and they're the only two that I can say. The county, first part of our conversation when we get on with the superintendent meetings and the county and CHOP, we review where we're at, and they use those numbers. So it's the county numbers. And then we have access, just like the general public has access to go to the county site. They can look at the MATHAC numbers, or they can go right to our district website, and we update those regularly. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Young.
It's important to remember that with our reaction to the numbers last year were an absence of vaccines, and at an 88% vaccination rate of at least one shot, we should be maybe managing a different mindset of how we manage through this. And I think it makes sense to add a metric to this, because it doesn't sound like there's a majority here that wants to make a vote as is. But I think we just have to remember that 88% is the number that should be top of mind.
Any other comments? So I'm just going to make a question to the solicitor, if we could. Given Mr. Young's comments that there's likely to be a need for a modification to the motion, how should we proceed in dealing with that?
You really have two options. You could either make the motion to amend the agenda now, and if there's a second, you could take discussion, then take the vote to amend the agenda and allow the public to comment on either the original action item and the proposed amendment, or we could wait until we get to the actual action item and then make a motion. It's really the board's pleasure.
What would you like to do?
I think let's amend now so it's clear
That
what we're
would make,
talking
that would make
about.
sense. Is there any objection right now for us considering the amending the motion? So that.
Why don't you state exactly what we're voting on and then ask that question?
That's fair. I'm sorry? Yeah. So it's the motion, I'm sorry, can you put on the motion, please? So it's that language right there, and then the next sentence starts off with, the district will remain in or shift into or out of mandatory masking when in following 2 consecutive weeks of high transmission rate based on Methacton school district levels. So again, are you okay with that?
Do you want to try my motion?
Say that again.
Do you want to try my motion?
You can. I mean, you're the board president. I mean, you can.
Okay, or we could try, all right, I suggest a motion as is with the addition of the district will remain in mandatory masking when the Methacton School District is in substantial or high transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Optional masking will resume when the Methacton School District is in low or moderate transmission for 2 consecutive weeks.
So just so everyone knows, that motion is different than the one I had read in
No,
terms of two things.
Yeah, I thought the whole discussion we just had was around the word high, not substantial and high.
So Madam President, would you like to make a motion and read that and then actually wait for a second? Because
If I may, Madam President, we should propose the motion, see if there's a second, then take discussion on the amendment.
you want to do your,
Do we like my motion or do we like your motion?
yours is fine as long as you take substantial out. I think that's what I heard.
Substantial in here.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm asking for a motion to amend the motion.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, then may I have a motion to amend the motion so that the new motion reads, approve the modification to the Methacton School District Health and Safety Plan to provide for a mask-optional indoor school environment in buildings that educate students in grades 7 to 12 and for non-student buildings beginning January 31st, 2022, and for buildings that educate students in grades K to 6 beginning February 28th, 2022. The district will remain in mandatory masking when the Methacton School District is in high transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Optional masking will resume when the Methacton School District is in low, moderate, or substantial transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Mr. McGinnis, may I have a second? Ms. Reese? Any discussion on the amendment? Okay. May I have a vote to approve no.
With the comment.
Oh,
Right. How are we doing this?
public comment then on
Well,
the
no,
amended
no,
motion.
no, you would vote to amend
You
the
have to-
motion and then, is that how you want it?
We have to take a vote to amend the motion first.
then we're
And the
taking-
the public can comment on either the amended
Because we're
motion.
not voting on the motion, we're voting
Correct.
on the amendment to the motion, correct? Okay. So all in favor of this amended motion? Should I roll call?
You're not required to roll call, but you certainly can.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries 5-3. So that is the amended motion on the table then for tonight. Thank you. Okay, now it's time for public comment on board action items. The board will now take public comment as an opportunity for residents to comment on matters that are to be decided on as outlined on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 4 minutes or less. The Board of School Directors may choose to respond to matters following the conclusion of comments on board action items.
Jim Malik, Worcester. I can't agree with Ms. Cancro anymore. You know, she made the statement, who are you guys to be making this decision? I mean, what are you guys, doctors? Scientists? Why are you going to mandate masking for high or substantial transmission? Somebody tell me other than, you know what, I'm afraid of high and I think we'll just mask up. Can somebody give me science? Give me a scientific reason other than, yeah, you know what? I think it's a good idea. Because that's what you're doing, throwing darts. There's darts being thrown up front. You know, it's so frustrating when you see people who have no concept of the science behind what's going on, sitting up there making decisions. Now, Dave, you said that, you would go back to your mask mandates if things didn't work. You don't have the authority or the power to do it. Somebody should read you the Supreme Court decision that just came out that shows you don't have the authority. This board, this district has no authority to even make them wear masks. None, zero. So let me help you out. The Supreme Court upheld a lower court ruling that the mask mandate of the acting Secretary of Health was illegal and null and void as of a couple days ago, not January. The Department of Health is a Commonwealth agency, and so is the school board, and that's how they came to their conclusion, because you're an agency. An agency's regulations are valid only if they are adopted within the agency's granted powers, issued pursuant to proper procedure, and they're reasonable. Mask mandates do not fall under the acting health secretary's granted powers, nor do they fall under your granted powers under the school code. So you better have your solicitor go read the school code. There's nothing in there that allows you to mandate masks. And if you continue on this course, somebody is going to get a court to tell you that. And it may be me. The implications for you guys are simple. The district is a Commonwealth agency. There's nothing in the school code that grants you the power to institute or enforce a mandate. You know, prime example, these young ladies here came with no masks. Well, you didn't see security telling them to leave because they can't. This happened before. There were a couple guys back there, no masks. They said no. The policeman was standing there. He told me he can't enforce anything. There's no statute. You guys have no power at all. I mean, why people are wearing masks in the audience, I have no clue. And here's what the Supreme Court said. You cannot just whip up new policies and regulations regarding student health because the proposed policy or regulation is related to student health and safety, because that's what you guys are doing. All right. So my advice to you again is get somebody with some medical knowledge on your pandemic team, you know, instead of Miss Larcenies, and get some advice that you can actually work with here. I want to hear somebody tell me what the science is that came with this amended motion. Just explain it to me. Thank you.
Amy Sorello, Lower Providence. Jim took half my comments, but the PA Supreme Court has affirmed the Commonwealth Court ruling that Pennsylvania agencies do not have the authority to issue mask mandates. Pennsylvania public schools are considered a Commonwealth agency, just like the Department of Health, and is defined as such in the 1949 Pennsylvania School Code, and they refer to public schools as local education agencies. Quote, an agency derives its power to promulgate regulations from its enabling act. The 1949 Pennsylvania School Code is the enabling act for public schools in Pennsylvania. Section 501 of the Pennsylvania School Code does not apply here. The adoption and enforcement of rules and regulations under Section 501 apply to conduct and behavior, not health and safety. Statutes regarding disease control are straightforward and very clear regarding what control measures can be taken. At this time, there is no existing rule or regulation that permits any Pennsylvania agency to mandate masks. I ask that you revise the health and safety plan and adopt optional masking for the district. The dress code will also need to be revised to remove the reference to masks. Finally, I ask that you implement optional masks for all students, staff, and visitors effective immediately. If you continue with the proposed staggered unmasking of our children, you are opening yourselves up for lawsuits that you will lose because Pennsylvania agencies do not have the authority to mandate anything. Your mask requirement is unlawful. In fact, you broke the law tonight when you forced us to put masks on and everyone else that walked into this building. So I hope you do the right thing and issue optional masks for the entire district starting tomorrow.
Anyone else for public comment?
Amanda Burnett, Worcester. Tonight, I'm here to ask each board member to vote to make masks optional. Opinion and fear should no longer carry any weight in your votes and should have no place in the decision-making for our children. The mask mandate is unlawful and should be dropped at every grade level immediately. The critical threat to our children is not COVID. The threat to our children lies deep in the mismanagement of power and control. Your complacency on the issues of our children's mental health, social growth, quality of education, and teacher dissatisfaction is a clear indication that you are not attentive to the actual pulse in our schools, our parenthood, or our community. Parents know their children. We are the only people who should be making decisions in regards to masking or any other recommendation of healthcare. We need our board to be objective, lean into facts, away from fear, and start making decisions for the Methacton School District that will actually improve the quality of education and our environments. Because at the end of the day, it is not your job to offer me medical advice. I do not need your opinion on how to raise my children. Your job is to create a school district that excels in education, employs the best teachers, offers safe school environments, and improves the quality of our community. I implore you to make the best informed decision and begin the momentum toward improvement tonight with a vote for mask optional.
Hello, Mawai Lee, Worcester Township. I'm in 6th grade, Skyview Upper Elementary School. So last week, a student from Arcola talked about how most students don't mind masks. I'm actually here to talk about the exact opposite. You see, I have some friends in my class that mind wearing masks. They purposely pull down their masks when no one is looking. The same goes for some other kids during lunch. Kids are also afraid to stand up against authority to talk about masking. For example, teachers. Another important reason why students mind masking is because we feel suffocated in those tiny little masks. We can't breathe properly. We also can't see each other's emotions, like smiling. Therefore, I request the board to vote optional for masks and let students have a choice to breathe free.
excuse me. Ed Thiel, Lower Providence. Thank you, board, for making this motion to change the what you're voting on tonight. And please follow through with creating a metric with these established criteria for moving to mask optional rather than a set calendar date. We should be concerned about the school district's rate and transmission, but also the status of our local hospitals. Those are the critical resource that we need to make sure that they're not overrun. And that's really what we're trying to get under control here so we can all get back to normal. We can always start with one metric that you're proposing today and, adjust if that makes sense. We really want to protect against the issue where, we pick the wrong metric and we never go back to school. We always have the chance of when we set this metric tonight, we can go and make that amendment so that we can get to the right criteria if the hospitals are really in good shape. This kind of metrics not to protect the people that go to football games and that don't wear their mask there. It's for all the students, in the district that do wear it and want to be in a safe environment. Those are the ones we're really trying to protect. If we get to those dates, and I really agree that, if the criteria works out well, we should be adjusting to those mask optional point because we've actually met those criteria. Okay. One concern that I have that if we go to mask optional, if I prefer my kid to wear a mask, I don't see anything in the policy to make sure that they wear them all day. Kids, listen to and they don't listen to your policies all the time. And I don't see any guards in the system and the current policy that we're putting forth to do that. When kids see that their friends are not wearing masks, they're going to want to do that too. And that might be against the parents' wishes. If we're talking about actually meeting the parents' wishes, we should actually be looking to address those in those situations. My office has gone to these mask optional, not masked criteria for this, and it's worked pretty well. Once we set out this clear goal, it's kind of nice to have that data that says, okay, when we meet this criteria, we're going to go to this plan. So this has actually worked out really well for them. And I really appreciate the board going through and amending this action today. Thank you.
Ashley Wilkerson, Lower Providence Township. I'm speaking as a parent, a taxpayer, and as a physician. I'd like to start by thanking the board for their efforts to keep our students and our staff members safe over the course of the pandemic. It has been a wild ride. As crazy as the past 21 months have been, the goal has always been the same, to get our kids physically in school and learning and to keep them there. And we've done that well this year. And now the guidance from the county is changing, and the question is before us as to what we do with masks. And Dr. Zerbe, you mentioned the CHOP policy lab recommendations. And so when you mentioned that, I was a little bit confused. So I pulled it up on my phone just now and wanted to read you one of the recommendations from their website. And it says, high vaccination rates, strong community commitment to testing when individuals feel ill with COVID-like symptoms, and low COVID-19 incidents make up the essential foundation for a mask optional approach. So I'm really glad that the board voted to amend the recommendation, because that is consistent with what CHOP policy lab recommends for optional masking. And I really hope we get there soon. I was also disappointed that when the county has shared specific guidance for when we should move to mask optional and actually has a graph that shows when we should move, that we didn't see that as part of the presentation. They've recommended masking indoors for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals for high and substantial spread. It's clearly in the information they've been sending out to districts, and I'm really disappointed that that wasn't part of the presentation today. As far as other issues that were addressed, Ms. Rocco, you brought up a great point about whether or not we should be using the numbers in the district versus the community. So I did the math looking at the district website. There are currently 42 students listed as having COVID in the district. That's not staff, that's just students. So if we extrapolate 400 kids per grade and multiply that out based on the incidence per 100,000, that puts us in the high range. And I think it actually puts us at a higher range than the community at large. So we're probably better off using the community numbers for Methacton than we are using just the numbers in the schools. Mr. Young, you mentioned that you see people attending events outside of the district where they're not wearing masks and they're in close proximity, and people absolutely have the right to choose to do that. The difference in the schools is that we have people who, for various reasons, are at higher risk of COVID transmission, and they have the right not to be worried that they're sitting next to somebody who is unmasked and unvaccinated and could become somebody who transmits the virus to them. Kids need to be in schools, and this is how we keep them there. The last thing that I want to mention is that coming here, one of my questions, which has been partially answered, was how do our staff feel about this? Because thank you for bringing up the point that this is their work environment, and it's really important, especially since we're seeing such high teacher burnout, not just in Methacton, but gosh, across the country. Teachers are exhausted. In our district, you look at what they've been through. They went from literally overnight having to switch to completely online learning with no training, and then going to a more structured online, and then going to hybrid, and now finally this year back in person, and having all kinds of other requirements hurled at them, all the while juggling 504s and IEPs and behavioral health plans and everything else. They're exhausted. And we really do need to know how they feel. And I know teachers who were not surveyed and have concerns. I'm a little confused as to why we don't just survey all of our staff, find out their concerns and address it in a group so that they feel heard. Because when you're burned out, feeling heard is one of the most important things as an employee. So I hope that we will survey our staff, find out how they feel about this, and work with them with whatever plan that we do so that we can make sure that they feel like they're in a safe environment. We have a teacher shortage right now. We have a substitute shortage. We have literally no teachers beating down the doors of any schools in the county or in the state. It is really, really important that we make sure that we support our teachers and they're comfortable with whatever plan we have in place. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Ranieri from Lower Providence. I am a teacher in the district and have been for 20 years. And yes, I am burnt out from wearing this 8 hours a day. I can't breathe and teach the things that I need to teach. I cannot smile at my students. They cannot smile at me. I cannot see their emotion every day. Yes, I am burnt out. There is another side of this. And every question that I hear being asked from you guys does not take that into account ever. You assume that everybody is scared. You assume that we are scared to death to be in front of our students. Listen, not a lot of us are speaking out. I am not afraid to speak out. But believe me when I say I'm one of the only ones with similar feelings that is not afraid to speak. I don't know why. I think because we wear a scarlet letter. Believe me when I say I have a scarlet letter on my back every day. There are people that teach with me that do not talk to me anymore. People that I've worked with and been friends with for 20 years. They will not talk to me anymore. Part of the reason is because I was quarantined not too long ago. I was quarantined, pulled out of my classroom as I had students walking in and out of my classroom. It was embarrassing to say the least. I have had enough of this. I can't take it anymore. So yes, I am burnt out, but not in the way that you are talking about it. No one brings up the other side, and I will wear that scarlet letter. I've had enough. Listen, there's one thing. If you were to ask me the one major concern that I have for our students before the pandemic, the biggest difference between 2002 and 2020 is their mental health. Blame social media. I don't know what it is. I don't know, but it's different. And the lockdowns and the school closures and the masking and the not smiling at each other, it is not making it better. I am so sick of kids are resilient. They're not. They're impressionable at these ages. I mean, everything we do, everything. Some of them aren't learning to speak correctly in the lower grades because their teachers are masked. Some kids with special needs, they're not getting what they could get because of the masks. I also have a question with this testing. Listen, you said that there's not going to be anything different for when kids are quarantined. So my question is this, if you are going to test to stay, will it only be the non-vaccinated students? Will they too wear a scarlet letter on their back? Because it's embarrassing. I don't want my students to have that on their back. Will there be privacy with the testing? Aren't we not going to quarantine then? Because if they're vaccinated, they don't get quarantined, but if they're non-vaccinated, they get tested and they stay, correct? I just want to make sure that's the case. So that would end the quarantining of healthy people, including teachers who are pulled away from their students when they are not sick. It has to stop. Are you guys concerned at all with the fact that there's probably going to be discrimination lawsuits? The Montgomery County Board of Health and with you guys. I would be concerned about that. Thank you.
Sheila Smith. Wait a second. Okay. Sheila Smith, Lower Providence. 168 days, 1,176 hours. The number of days and hours that our children have been masked. What have you done to our children? Mask wearing and social distancing requirements pose serious threats and long-lasting harm to our children's physical and emotional well-being. What is the impact to our children who live day in and day out in the world without smiles, without physical contact? Over the past 20 months, seven of you have taken away our constitutional parental and student rights, hindered our children's right to quality of education, and imposed medical treatment without our permission or support. And we are worse off because of it. You have failed every student and every parent in this district. The current care board members are so blind by self-righteousness that they exhibit zero empathy for parents, students, and staff that don't agree with your beliefs. Study after study have proven that healthy people under 18 do not suffer from major COVID events. And unlike other pathogens such as influenza, children are not infecting older and vulnerable adults. Oh, shoot. I was recently told by an administrator that every child every child has the right to in-person quality education. As of October 14th, a little over a month into the school year, 630 students didn't have that right. They were forced to quarantine for 10 days for no reason at all. Not all that 630, one contracted COVID. And by the way, fun fact, we all know that vaccinated students who were the ones that transmitted COVID to other children. Our former I'll skip that. I recall on Election Day, Paul Winters had said that he will accept not one child's death. What about a child from suicide or drug overdose? Our children have a greater chance of being murdered by a school shooter than of dying of COVID. Hence the last 3 weeks. Let's put this comment into perspective. Do you know how many children have died from COVID since the beginning of this pandemic? Less than 1%. 98% of that 535 were high risk and had pre-existing disease. And that's from the CDC website, so that's for the source. Hundreds of studies have shown the negative impacts that they have. And so I lost my track. Of the children, okay, so fun fact, humans can spot a smile more than a mile away. So there we go as far as children being able to connect with others. You have forced them to have no emotional contact. Our children have become depressed from social isolation, being forced to wear masks all day. Most no longer enjoy going to school. Their grades have suffered tremendously. In fact, I know for a fact, hundreds of students felt scared and threatened to even go to school last week because of everything that's happened. So as a result, suicides and deaths from overdose are at an all-time high. More than 100,000 Americans have died from overdose since in 2020, from May of 2020 to 2021. It's an increase of over 30%. Such deaths have doubled since 2014. Opioids are up 75%. So here's the bottom line. A child can get and give COVID regardless of vaccine status. The number one cause and number two cause of death in children is suicide and overdose.
Thank you
and
for your
imposing
comments.
medical treatment and social distance is child abuse, unconstitutional, and unethical.
Good evening, Ramona De La Rosa, Worcester Township. I'd like to start by saying that there are many parents who are unable to make the meeting tonight. I may be one voice, but I speak for many. As far as the proposal, I don't understand the timing of it. Let's look at what's happening around us and the recommendations and actions being taken. It doesn't make sense to change our current course. For instance, and one of the board members already brought this up, Cornell University just went virtual because they had over 900 positive cases last week, with a high percentage of them being Omicron. According to Montgomery County's reporting, both Lower Providence and Worcester Township are in the highest transmission zone range. That's also already been mentioned. And while death is the worst outcome for COVID, there are plenty of people whose lives have been significantly impacted due to long COVID and others who have no idea what impact this disease will have on them for the balance of their lives. Scientists have found that even asymptomatic cases can end up with delayed long-haul symptoms. In multiple studies, both here and around the world, they are finding organ damage in asymptomatic cases, including in children. Researchers at CHOP found that children with COVID, even those with mild or no symptoms, show signs of blood vessel damage that may or may not cause long-term complications. My point is there's still so much that we don't know. But we do know what the CDC and the WHO have to say. The CDC recommends universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. The CDC released 3 studies that highlight the importance of layered prevention strategies. They found that school districts without a universal masking policy in place were more likely to have COVID-19 outbreaks. Nationwide, counties without masking requirements saw the number of pediatric COVID-19 cases increase nearly twice as quickly during the same period. On Tuesday, the Director General of the World Health Organization stated this, quote, "It's not vaccines instead of masks. It's not vaccines instead of distancing. It's not vaccines instead of ventilation or hand hygiene. Do it all. Do it consistently and do it well," end quote. This is a matter of public health. If we go mask optional, it increases the risks for everyone in the school, not just those who are no longer masking. It is illogical and irresponsible to drop the mask mandate in school at this time. We not only have the highly transmissible Delta variant coupled with a high number of cases, but we also have the new Omicron variant, which is apparently doubling cases every 2 days. For anyone that's done a doubling everyday math problem, you know the growth is rapid and it's exponential. Some may say if you don't agree, then take the virtual option and keep your kid at home. First of all, our kids have missed enough in-person learning. Second, this year's current virtual option is not a good option for many of us, especially those of us who have children with IEPs. It is not equal to the virtual environment we had access to last year. If we want our kids to stay in person, you are our last line of defense on this subject. I ask you to make the decision that mitigates spread and maintains a safer in-person learning environment for our students, our teachers, and for everyone that works in our schools. Thank you.
Excuse me just a minute. Could I ask any audience members who are currently unmasked to please mask before we continue with public comment? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Stern, Delphiner, Lower Providence Township. I too speak as a parent, as a community member, as a physician, and as a pediatrician. First, I'd like to thank the board very much for all of your hard work over this year. This has not been easy for anybody. You have a very, very difficult job, and you have all taken this very seriously, and we do appreciate your hard work. It's been a very difficult balance for everybody. We have to take into account all of the stakeholders here, our students, their families, our staff, and our teachers. Everybody is tired. Everyone is tired. Physicians are tired. We're really tired. Teachers are really tired. Students are tired. Parents are tired. But we are a community and we must work together. It really saddens me to see what's happening in this community and how we have been torn apart by this. It's not necessary. We all need to think about each other. And that includes being respectful and wearing masks when we're asked to, because it is an important part of public health. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is important. It's important to be vaccinated. Vaccines have been shown to be safe and effective, readily available, and free. If you choose not to vaccinate, that is your choice. But understand that the consequences of that are not limited just to you. I do support the board in their decision or in their proposal to go to mask optional when it is safe to do so, using clear metrics that are understandable and readily visible to the public will be an important part of that. I do have faith in our students that they can change with the times when they need to. When they need to mask because of community spread, they will. And when they have the option not to, if their parents agree, they will have the option not to. All of our students, all of the students in this community deserve a good public education. And that is the role of the school board. That is the role of us as parents, and that is the role of us as a community, is to work together. Thank you.
Joe Rittenhouse, Lower Providence. So I rise today in support of the change to the health and safety plan until I heard the new change, which I'll address. So I still want the vote, but I could spend the entire time up here, I only have a few minutes, talking about studies on masks. I could talk about the pandemic becoming endemic, how it will never go away. But today, I will leave it to others. I could spend the next minutes talking about the restrictions that have had effects on our children, how mental health. I could talk about how some children in the lower grades haven't ever had an interaction with some of their classmates without a mask. I could bring up the terrible mental health on our students, but today I leave that to others. I could bring up legality. I could bring up the onslaught of lawsuits that are waiting in the wings. Some people watching this right now, hoping they won't have to come to that. But today, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about one thing. That's principles. And I want to speak clearly and bluntly with a little bit of real politique in there. The principal thing to do as a school board is to mitigate harm and increase the quality of our education. And it seems the tide has shifted. It seems we're no longer trying to mitigate harm, but we're swimming upstream, almost hoping for a perpetual pandemic. So we never have to get rid of these powers. This isn't in my script, but I'm kind of blown away that we spent years talking about, or 2 years now, talking about the pandemic team and how much we trust them and the experts. And all of a sudden, the pandemic team got shortened to 2 directors who changed everything. So, damned if we do, damned if we don't. We'll throw the entire pandemic team out for the will of 2 people. All right. We could fall back on what the state wants. We could fall back on what the county suggests. But none of that talks about what we as a district should do. I was saddened that prior to this meeting, there were members of the board who were tweeting about this before we even came up here to vote. Some sharing articles that said we need indefinite masking forever. It's not open-minded. It's not open to suggestions. And then to come up here and say you're pro an optional mandate is ludicrous. It's what you do in private, what you do in public. I could talk about how one said, this means unpaid volunteer school boards would once again be in the hot seat. Thanks, Tom Wolf, with an angry face. You are in the hot seat. This is your decision. That's not principled. This is not a decision that you wish. This is not a decision you wish to make. You're free to leave. There are people who will make that decision. I'm surprised this isn't a unanimous vote. Truthfully, I think from like just the perspective of you guys being up there, I think you want to move back into focusing on education. But now we've just added, a whole nother section to this health and safety plan. It says, it could go up for 2 weeks, down 2 weeks, and we're going to go back and forth for masks, forever. Does anyone up there believe that Monco's going to get rid of their COVID figures anytime next year? When are they going to stop? So this is just prolonging the problem indefinitely, because we will never know when this pandemic is over if it's endemic. It will go on forever. I understand this decision is difficult for you today, but the moral answer is clear. There are students and parents who are waiting for your decision. And sadly, they have left their responsibility. You've left them with nobody to help them except you. 9 people who have the choice. You can't leave it to somebody else except for one other group. The parents, the teachers, and the students of Methacton. Trust them. Trust them. I think you want to get past this. I think we all do. But you're going to prolong it with this new amendment. And we're going to be doing this all summer long. Go for mask optional. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
James Dutko, parent of 2 small kids, and we recently moved to the Methacton School District because we saw it as a shining example to the school districts in the surrounding townships. I encourage you to vote against this. I think wearing a mask is not at all a burden. I think if I don't have a prepared statement. Thank you for the time and the chance to be able to address you and for all your work. But it's, if you want to continue to be an example and you want to continue to support the parents and protect the kids in the school district, I think wearing a mask is like the minimum amount that we can ask them to do. You want to suppress the level of viral replication and the level, the chances that the virus can have to spread around. I mean, that could be an example for all of southeastern PA. I mean, we don't have to do what Bucks school districts in Bucks County and Chester County are doing. So yeah, I just encourage you to vote against this. Continue to wear masks. It's not like, yes, it is endemic. It will be here forever, like the last person just said, but that doesn't mean that there won't be future solutions. I mean, Pfizer has a new pharmaceutical treatment that will come down to mitigate the symptoms of it, blocking the protease essential for the replication of the virus. There's going to be more newer treatments in the future. And for now, we can continue to protect our families, because the kids don't just, you have 12 cases in your Methacton school, but they don't live in a bubble. They don't live just like by themselves. They talk to their grandparents, they visit, they go around. I mean, it's not just the school buildings, it's the whole area. So anyway, I'm sorry I don't have a prepared statement, and if that was kind of rambling, but thanks for your time, and I encourage you to vote against this.
Any further public comment?
Chunling Ma, hello. Chunling Ma, Worcester Township. Good evening. I don't want to talk about debate whether it's good to wear a mask or it's better to wear a mask or it's better not to wear a mask. I just want to echo what Ms. Cancro said. Who are we, or I think parents get to make a decision, but who are the board to make such a decision? If PA Supreme Court already ruled the PA government does not have the authority to impose mask mandate, why would the school district has this authority? Maybe the solicitor can help me answer the question. I know some parents don't like remove the mask mandate, and some parents strongly suggest remove the mask mandate. But if the school board still impose mask mandate, do you guys have the authority to do it? If you do it, will we get into trouble with the legal case? That's what I'm saying. I just don't think, even if people don't like it, if the school board does not have the authority, they still have to do it. They just don't have a choice. It's not in your hands. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Okay. So the motion, I'm just going to reread the motion that's on the table here. It is approve the modification to the Methacton School District Health and Safety Plan to provide for a mask optional indoor school environment in buildings that educate students in grades 7 to 12 and for non-student buildings beginning January 31st, 2022, and for buildings that educate students in grades K to 6 beginning February 28th, 2022. The district will remain in mandatory masking when the Methacton School District is in high transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Optional masking will resume when the Methacton School District is in low, moderate, or substantial transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Reese? Do I have a second? Mr. McGinnis? Okay, any further board discussion?
No, again, my only concern is following what the Montgomery County is saying, is that it's a recommendation and not a mandate. So I go back to that, and I just go back to the fact that we're arbitrarily placing metrics on here without even, I do agree, not talking to the pandemic team, not having Dr. Zerbe go back to Montgomery County. Again, we're not following our agency that we should be following. So that is my only reason why I would not vote for this, because I feel like we're just placing these mandates on without doing full investigation and allowing us to have a consultation with the agency we should be following. But I do think we should follow the recommendations, and we're offering opportunities for vaccinations and providing a safe environment for all our students. So.
Very quickly, because I think everyone wants to vote. Last night I attended a training for school board directors. And although this is the beginning of my 7th year as a school board director, I feel it's important to keep learning. And I missed the first hour of the training, but I attended the entire second hour. And 3 people spoke. And one gentleman spoke who's been in education for over 40 years. And his comment to everybody on that training was, no matter what, do what is in the best interest of children. And that's not always possible, right? Because there's budgets and there's things like that. But in the bottom line is you do what's in best interest of children. And here we have 2 sides, right? Whether they're right, wrong, and it doesn't matter. Some people feel this is best, some people feel that is best. So I am going to vote for optional, and I respect Ms. Cancro and Ms. Rocco's and Mr. Young's concern about adding the high. That was the compromise I was willing to make based on the recommendations of the physicians I have spoken to. And it is absolutely your right to do what you wish. I would not feel right about voting yes to optional masking without encouraging those to get vaccinated. Doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean I'm gonna put a scarlet letter on you. My 16-year-old hates needles, hates them. She went on Wednesday to get her booster, and I was proud of her. Does that mean I'm not proud of other 16-year-olds who don't make that choice? Absolutely not. but she made that choice to protect her grandmothers and her friends and for the patients of one of the physicians that spoke. What that physician won't tell you is that she's a pediatric oncologist. She's not just a pediatrician. So she has spent her entire career saving children's lives. So yes, I do look at her opinion as more significant than my own. I just teach children. She saves children. I'm looking forward to when my 13-year-olds can get boosted so that they can be as safe as possible. So I will vote optional with this one small amendment if that's the compromise that makes me feel a little bit better. I apologize for that.
Any further comments from the board? Yes.
Yes, I did want to make a comment. I am having a hard time getting behind this new plan with the change. I did want to make a comment. Right now, there's actually 24 cases in the district. And as our enrollment report in October was 4610 total enrollment, that is 0.5% of COVID cases in the district. So I think that when I was making this statement of I'm concerned about the numbers district-wide, and I understand Dr. Zerbe can't police that. I wasn't expecting him to. I just wanted to make a point that we are basing our high on a whole district of residents in 2 townships with a number of 24. And I believe last week it was in the 30s, and that was the highest we've had. So I did want to make that point. I'm concerned with that. Like I said, that's 0.5%. Another comment was how would teachers, administrators be able to make sure kids were wearing masks if parents or children wanted, or parents wanted their children to? That's a personal home decision, and we as parents really need to work with our children to trust them. We send them on a bus to trust them that they're not going to be vandalizing a bus or bullying someone on a bus. We tell them to do the right thing and make the right decisions. We tell them to listen to their teachers in the classroom. We tell them what we expect of them as their parents, and they are our children. Those are conversations that have to occur at home. I would in no way want a teacher to have to monitor who is supposed to wear a mask and who isn't. So I know we're not talking about that as a board, but because it was brought up, I can't sit here and not say anything. Another thing I'm so glad someone brought up, the drugs that are coming from Pfizer, and I believe another pharma company as well, unless they're both from Pfizer, but I know there's 2 drugs coming on the market in 2022. I mean, that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. We do have new medication that is coming very soon to treat COVID. Those are just some points I wanted to make. And someone did say, regarding the vaccines, they're safe, they're readily available. And I'm happy that this area has a high percentage of vaccinated individuals. And I'm hoping that that helps people feel safer.
Any further discussion from the board?
No, just the one, I just wanted to get clarification with Dr. Zerbe. The one person asked about the test to say the vaccinated and unvaccinated, and I do want them to understand the clarity that it's for all. If you could just explain.
Yeah, so we will be doing the test to stay for all the students, but all students will be eligible to participate in the test to stay. So if you are vaccinated, and you are exposed, you can still get tested. But the county exclusion protocol, and I'm trying to be clear here because there's a difference. The county exclusion protocol does say that if you're in the new bubble within the 6 feet, and you choose not to participate in the test to stay program, you would then have to quarantine. If a vaccinated person is inside that bubble and is not experiencing symptoms and chooses not to participate in test and stay, they would not have to quarantine.
And just to add, the privacy is it is a private.
Yeah, the only people that have that conversation are the parents and the nurses in the district. No one else has access to that information or ask that questions. And primarily for the protection of information for our families, we've always kept them. Some districts have lay people do some of the contact tracing. We have all of our nurses do that. So when those conversations need to be had, it's with a trained medical professional.
Yes, Mr. Winters.
Yeah. So just to repeat that, Dr. Zerbe, because we have had this conversation several times, the quarantining process is not a methactin process in the test to stay. This is a process that is defined by the county if we want to participate in the program. Is that correct? Based on vaccinated and unvaccinated students.
The exclusion process is a rule that is made by the county, adopted by the county as part of the county code for the Department of Public Health for the county. So that exclusion process is the thing that we have to follow. It's similar to the exclusion processes with other transmissible diseases, whooping cough, things of that nature that our district has been following for years. This is just a different protocol for this particular COVID-19 virus. And we need to follow that. Our nurses are compelled to do that. So it is a county thing. It's not our determination. We follow the rules as they're dictated by the county.
Yeah, as a comment, I think as many on both sides have asked that there's better cooperation among the board and the community, and we all wish that. I know certainly I do. I think it is best that everybody has a honest argument and consistent, and not try to spin things around to the point. We are accused of spinning. At the same time, when there's elements related to how we describe how quarantine is to be performed, and we talk about it and we explain it, and it's understood, but it's accused that Dr. Zerbe, you're running something that is outside the norm, it is disingenuous. I just want to make that point.
And I spoke to this at the last meeting with Mr. Winters. We know my children don't go to the district. It's been made very clear by many people. That is absolutely an accurate statement. That is a county guideline, not something methactin is pushing. So I make that very clear to people I talk with, that is not something that is coming from Dr. Zerbe, this current board, the former board, that is from the county. So I just wanted to mention that.
Any other points of discussion from the board? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to take a roll call vote on this. Ms. Reese?
Yes.
Ms. Purdue?
Yes.
Ms. Cancro?
No.
Mr. Winters?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
I'm a yes. So seeing that, motion is passed 5-3. The motion as amended. Thank you. Now it's time for courtesy of the floor, where there's an opportunity for residents to make comment on matters that are or may be before the board. The board asks that you keep your comments to 4 minutes or less. The Board of School Directors may choose to respond to matters following the conclusion of comments. You can also submit questions via email to information@methacton.org. Anyone for public comment at this time? Seeing, oh.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay, Janelle Lombardo, Lower Providence. I have a child in Skyview and Woodland. We've spent all night talking about the health and safety of our children regarding the mask debate, but I'd like to change the topic and bring before you another issue. This one in particular also directly affects the health of our kids, and no one seems to be doing anything about it. Tonight, I want to talk about the heavy backpacks that our children are lugging around day in and day out. I want to talk about the fact that they're so heavy that our kids are struggling. I want to talk about the fact that our children aren't wearing coats to school because they have nowhere to put them. I want to talk about the fact that our tax dollars paid for lockers in these schools and they're not being used. I gave the benefit of the doubt that the reason was because of COVID and trying to keep the kids apart and not wanting them to stand next to each other. But no, I learned the reason that they're not being used isn't COVID related. It's because the lockers weren't being used as intended. I don't even know what that means or what kind of answer that is, but that's what I was told. So I have a real issue with us not using these lockers when our kids are struggling. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, they recommend that your child's backpack weigh no more than 10 to 15% of their body weight. So for an 80-pound child, that means that the backpack should weigh no more than 8 to 12 pounds. Backpacks that are too heavy can cause pain, lead to serious injury, and affect posture. Children can end up with injuries to their joints, back, spine, muscles, neck, and shoulders from backpacks that are too heavy for their developing, let me say that again, developing spines. So based on this calculation, my daughter should only be carrying a max of 13 pounds. I weighed her backpack multiple times. It's 19.8 pounds. And that is school-related material only, no personal items, okay? That's 6.8 pounds over her recommended max. My daughter's been struggling from the beginning of school with the backpack. She complains of back pain all the time to the point where I couldn't let it go any longer. I actually did reach out to Miss Baracle. And in her defense, she was great. She was amazing. She was lovely to deal with. She was responsive. She emailed me back right away. She personally called me twice to see what she could do. However, none of the solutions offered made an impact or, in my opinion, offered any solution. So I'll tell you what they were. One, she said she talked to the teachers directly to see what could be done about lightening the load, allowing kids to leave stuff in the classroom. She confirmed she had the conversation, yet nothing has changed. My daughter still brings home everything. The teachers are not on the same page on this topic. Some are saying you can leave stuff. Others are saying, no, you have to take it home in case we go virtual. So the teachers aren't on the same page with this. But even if they could leave stuff in the room at night, where? In a desk that they share with 2 other students, it's just not feasible. The second solution was kids were shown a video in class on how to properly wear a backpack, okay? Both straps on, make sure it's tight. That's great, but it doesn't lighten the load. So that's not a solution. 3, I was told she could carry her lunch bag and her laptop in the front. So take it out and carry it in the front. This doesn't lighten the load either, okay? It's just redistributing the weight. It's still the same amount of weight on her developing spine, not a solution. And what happens when she trips and falls and breaks the school laptop? Okay, then we have another issue. The fourth solution was if your child really wants a locker, they can request one. I'm sorry, but what child is going to single themselves out and request a locker when none of their friends are doing it? They're not going to do that. So that's not really supporting the whole child when you're willing to sacrifice their emotional health over their physical health. So none of these 4 solutions are good enough for me.
Could you wrap up, please? Thank you.
Yes, I will. So I'm bringing this to you now because I've hit a wall. I've emailed. I've gone to the principal. Like, nothing is being done about this. There's an issue. This is not healthy. So if we're going to stand up here and make health decisions for our children,
Thank you.
let's make some on these other issues as well.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other comments for courtesy of the floor?
Ashley Wilkerson, Lower Providence. First, I just want to thank the board for voting for a health and safety plan that has clear parameters and will make sense to parents. Second, Ms. Rocco, I just wanted to clarify your numbers because I think you may be confusing percent positivity with case counts per 100,000, and it's important to differentiate those two since it's used in the plan that was just voted into place. We actually can't calculate percent positivity because we don't know how many students were tested, and you need that in order to calculate it. What we can calculate is the cases per 100,000, which is the metric that we'll most likely be using, and using that metric if we do what you said is 21 cases out of 4,600 students, our case count per 100,000 is 455. And if I look on the county website, the cases per 100,000 in Lower Providence are 155 and in Worcester are 106. So again, we're still looking at, if we use district numbers alone with students, much higher case counts than if we just go ahead and use what the county recommends, which is the numbers for the community at large. Thank you.
$168 days, 1,167 hours, the number of days that you have.
Excuse me, could you please state your name and municipality?
Are you going to start that over again?
I'll keep it paused while you do so.
Well, now you're just taking my time.
All right, fine. We'll restart. Thank you.
Sheila Smith, Lower Providence. 168 days, 1,176 hours, the number of days and hours you have masked our children and social distance our children. Stay out of our children's medical treatments. I find the hypocrisy unbelievable. These same individuals are the ones shouting, "My body, my choice." Focus on operational and fiscal efficiency, educational excellence and teacher engagement, student safety, bullying and stalking. Current policies protect the abusers over the victims. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Certain board members are pushing the centralization of education, forcing unnecessary medical treatment, and utilizing confirmation bias on our students. The current board members should focus on academic priorities and performance that lead to our children's future success rather than grooming our children to be social justice warriors. Fun fact, Dr. Zerbe, the district needs to do a full SWOT analysis, not just a SWO. Look at the declining enrollment numbers and regrettable staff resignations. Here are a few words to help you understand the benefit of the T in SWOT. Voucher program, charter schools, private schools, decrease in tax revenue. I could go on. Here are the fun facts from the last 7 years. Year over year of increased taxes and debt, matched by plummeting year over year of district ranking, teacher morale, and student and parent engagement. Significant internal deficiencies of school safety, bus driver requirements, and transportation operations. Year over year of declining enrollment, declining graduation rates, and school performance. Increased division and distrust, that's the one thing we can agree on, by misleading the community, especially on the D&I efforts. So again, the survey and the survey report results and the audit report was never presented to the public. There has been zero transparency on D&I issues. There has been a great deal of gaslighting, and the D&I survey only had 1,585 responses. 73% of those responses were students grades 7 through 12 that conducted the survey without parental consent, nor did they have a chance to review the questions. I close with this. It is okay to not have all the answers. It is okay to have different opinions. It's not okay to utilize confirmation bias, knowingly misrepresent and withhold information, and force your ideologies on others. We, the parents and the community members, are not the enemies. We entrusted you to educate and protect our children. Your jobs, volunteered or paid, only exist because we exist, because our children exist. We are your employers by virtue of the taxes that we pay and the business we provide you. We challenge, raise concerns, and question your decisions because we love our children and we will fight for our children. We love the community we live in, and we are devastated as we watch our children sink into fear, depression, apathy, and anxiety, and watch the board override our rights as parents. The school performance and teacher morale and engagement plummets, and the parents and community division increases. Please invite all to the table, not just those who align with your ideologies, beliefs, and values. Despite our differences, we are stronger together. Thank you.
If I could kindly ask any unmasked audience members to please mask. Thank you.
It's getting old, Liz. Getting old.
I agree.
Jim Malik, Worcester. Board Policy 903 is unconstitutional, but you can enforce the 4 minutes. So your problem is you don't enforce it on people you like, but you really strictly enforce it on people who you don't like or you disagree with. That's where you get in trouble. You should tell your solicitor and ask his opinion, because you could get yourself sued doing that. So just food for thought. I heard the word metrics brought up. The most important metric for healthy school-age children is death. We have 0 here. 0. Since the whole pandemic started. 0 methactin. Second most important is ICU admissions. Rare. Third, severe disease. Rare. And it goes to what I said before about kids don't get it and don't spread it. That's a general statement. The reason that they don't get severe disease and they don't spread it is because they lack ACE2 receptors in their upper respiratory system. And they clear the virus right away. So there's a reason, a scientific reason, why the safest place to be is in a school with kids, because it's the lowest risk group on the planet. In your motion to remask, and then, if it's in the high zone, you didn't consider any science, because one of the things you have to consider is the characteristic of the virus. So you could be in the high zone, but you have a virus like Omicron that is a totally benign, but more infectious, and there's no need to mask. So you didn't factor any science into your decision. Science on Omicron is people hardly get symptoms. I mean, people are going to get the virus. Joe Rittenhouse is right. It's here to stay. You can't prevent it. If you could, it'd be gone by now. It's here forever. But in your little, I don't know, we'll call it the Winters McGinnis, scientific whatever they didn't even consider the fact that the virus could be totally mild and benign. So you should have done that. So you're going to have problems. It's going to be a seesaw again. Now, I heard the vaccine is safe. Anybody see the news today? The CDC came out and recommended against using J&J's vaccine because of severe clotting problems with the vaccine. Now, my opinion as a doctor is that's not safe. I have a adolescent son who I'm not going to have get the vaccine because there have been multiple reports of myocarditis and heart inflammation with the vaccine. See, and what it is a parent making a risk decision. His risk of dying from COVID is essentially 0. Why would we take a risk of damaging his heart for the rest of his life? So, for you guys, it's like, why don't we do that? Let's throw the dart. Oh, yeah, we'll do the high stuff. It's just, you need some medical advice from some knowledgeable people. What's the end point for COVID? You guys are going to keep doing this forever. When it's endemic, it's not going to be eradicated like, polio. It's endemic. It's here forever. So you're going to be at these meetings in your mask for the next 20 years. You're going to have like a mask imprint on your face. So I think you better start figuring out how to deal with it.
Anybody else for public comment?
Joe Rittenhouse, Lower Providence. So thank you for going mask optional. I think that's the positive, but now starts day one of trying to remove the policy altogether. So I hope that the 3 who voted no, feet to the fire, ask every week, when is the end point for the health and safety policy regardless? Now that the whole health and safety panel is here, I just wanted to make sure that we know what the end goal is. If we meet 100% vaccination, we won't, but if we do, is that when it ends? Is that when we call it? Again, I don't think that the Monco, I don't think the state, I don't think they're ever going to stop counting COVID numbers. It's going to quietly disappear 2 years, 3 years from now off their websites. So are we going to continue this every single week from now until the end of time? I think that that's a real possibility. Oh, you want me to pause? We can catch up. I want to be polite.
It's okay. Good.
Okay. I don't have much more to say, but and then the other thing is the seesawing back and forth. I truly believe that after we go maskless, if you think that you're going to come back and these kids are going to say, "Oh, we're going to put these back on," you'll have a revolt. You'll have a revolt of people on your hands who will say no. And frankly, I support that. I hope that the kids consider. I saw the issues we were having with the TikTok trends and things like that are appalling. What happens if one turns around and says, "Hey, just don't do it"? After Matakan says we're going back into masks every winter, we come back in the fall, everything's great for a period of months, and then we go back in the mask from now until the end of time. I think that seesawing effect is going to affect these kids for years to come, and they will eventually revolt, and you won't be able to do anything. So I guess day one, when are we removing all the masks? Thank you.
Chunling Ma, Worcester Township. I want to talk about two other issues not related to masking tonight. One is the threat that has happened in the
Excuse me, Ms. Small, can you speak up a little bit, please?
Hello? Maybe just bring closer. I just want to talk about two issues that is not related to masking. One was the threats we received in the past week. I think we received at least 3 emails from Dr. Zerby in the past week. It's regarding some rumor about the threats in Arcola and Skyview. It just it didn't really have much detail about what the threat was about and how it was handled. All we heard was that it turned after the law enforcement investigated and turned out it was a non-threat. Then, because my daughter does not go on the social media, so we really don't know what exactly happened. Then I read something on social media, the grown-up social media, saying there was one boy in Arcola was considered by rumor like he could be the threat, and even got a list of names. I don't know if that's true or not. It just got me really concerned and alarmed if people talk about a list of names, because we didn't know anything. And then later I found out like many of my daughter's friends didn't go to school on Friday. I don't know how severe this is, and I just want the board or the administration could give our parents more information. You don't have to talk about the names, just give us more details about what happened so we can feel safe and assured to send my kids to school. And I heard this coming, I think today we got an email saying this coming Friday would be a date, like the rumor said it would be a date with a threat or something. So basically, I just want to have more information on that so we can feel more rest assured, so we can feel safe to send our children to school every day. Second issue I want to bring up was about the Arrowhead project. And I heard, I know this project, the building cost was $35 million and the interest, the $17 million, overall was more than $50 million. But I heard recently we needed to have a sprinkler system, which was not planned. It was not mentioned in the original contract, whatever. Basically, it was oversight. I want to find out, was this oversight on the architect company, the KCBA, or the contractor? I assume, I'm not expert, just by common sense, I feel should be like the architect company's responsibility. What concerns me is that this is not the first time things that have not planned, and then we have to take the cost on our side. And we had this dry dirt problem and had this moving electric poles. And this is the third time, as far as I know, maybe there are more. I don't think it's right to handle cases like that. Like if we're a family, we're doing some home project, we talk to the contractor. I want this. Say, well, we want this bathroom remodel. Then I want this thing and that thing get done in a certain pattern. Then we negotiate the price. Then we get the final result, and we don't have to worry about it. We need to move a pipe or anything. But this has happened to our district a few times. I think it really needs the board really needs to get some attention on this. I don't know if this is a legacy issue left by the previous board director, Mr. Navarrete, since he was the property committee. But since we have
Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to finish up quickly. I just wanted a new board member and a new president. Since you're here, you can take more time to look into this project. Thank you.
Seeing no one else for public comment, are there any other comments from the board?
I just want to, I guess, ask in reference to the use of lockers, right? So we made a decision with the pandemic on the use of lockers. Can you clarify what that decision was or the point of view, and then when we decided we'll revisit that aspect?
I'm not certain we actually made a decision about lockers associated with COVID. Locker decisions, the operation of the districts, it goes back many years, actually before my time, the way we no longer use lockers as a matter of safety and timing within the day, if I remember correctly. There may be some other matters associated with that. If the board would like, I can certainly gather some of that detail and share it with you.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Reese? Do I need a second on that? Meeting adjourned? Yep, one motion. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.